All right, y'all, we got a little bit longer video for you today, but it's going to be a good one. So grab some food, grab a bourbon and sit back, unless it's 9 in the morning, then grab a beer. But we've got a pair of John Lobbs that have seen some much better days, and we're going to have to completely overhaul these things. I was kind of taken back by the condition of these things when he brought them in. But good grief, these things have seen some better days, and we're going to get them back to those original specs. So let's go. All right, let's start off by explaining my voice. Allergies have been getting to me, so that's why my voice is a little coarse today. If it winds up kind of cracking like a 13-year-old boy, then well, we'll just have to deal with that. But maybe I should limit the talking and we can just kind of mime this out. But here's the sole of these, and as you can see, it's got a closed channel. He's just worn all the way through the stitches up here. But we'll get it back. Now, a little background info on John Lobb. He is probably one of the most respected shoemakers in history, out of England. And he was a bootmaker that came to London, got a royal stamp, and he has made shoes for some of the most well-known names throughout history, especially in the late 1800s, early 1900s, or should we say just pretty much all throughout the 1900s, 20th century. And even today, he's over in London on St. James's Street and still makes a lot of bespoke shoes, but he also does some ready-to-wear. And there's now some shops that have kind of broken off with the John Lobb name, in Paris is one of the big ones. But the original is there in London. All right. Can you hear that ripping sound? All right, first thing we did, take that top lift off, and you can start to hear that ripping sound. That's the glue that's being pulled off those fibers of real leather. Every single one of these, that is real layers of stacked leather. And as I was taking this off, it was bending. You won't get that with a lot of, subpar materials made out of blocks. It's flexible. It's they're layers of leather, but they are pretty sturdy though when they're all together. But just high quality, and a lot of nails being used to hold that thing on. And I should probably start clipping all these, trying to do it with my left hand, because I'm right-handed, and this hand's stronger than this hand, obviously. I probably should do that, get a little workout. All right, so this is not a 360. Most of your higher end shoes are going to be a 3/4 welt. So you can see the little line right here. There's where the welt ends, goes all the way around to there, and then we have your ram. Because it's not a 360, there would be stitches through here if it was, but most you have to use nails, and then that's strictly nailing the back portion, the heel portion of the sole to the upper. You see where the kind of fold that up. A lot of people don't get to see what it looks like because either their shoes are brand new and this is all glued down, but when we fold up this little flap, there's the stitches up underneath there. And over time, that happens. We've had a lot of guys that have brought in their shoes. As soon as they start to see the stitches, or this will start to fold up, and they'll say, "Oh, I need a resole." No, you don't. It's strictly you've worn through this tiny little flap, and you've still got 75% of your sole left. And as I'm cutting through this, I'm not really having to pull it because there's not a lot of glue up underneath here. It's made the way it's supposed to be made, where the strength is in the stitches. The paste that was used on this was strictly to hold it in place like a hot knife through butter, just cut through the stitches. So you can see the glue, it wasn't much. And just pull it right off. Some makers will just glue the whole thing, and when you take the sole off, it's ripping the cork out. But you know, a lot of times the cork needs to be replaced anyways, which we are, and so it's no big deal. Here's your ram. Looks like a little horseshoe. This is a pre-cut one. If John Lobb were to be making a bespoke shoe, this would a lot of times have little serrated edges in it where they actually have to cut, and it's a piece of leather that they mold around themselves. It's a beautiful work of art. The ready-to-wear line, which is still incredible. This is real leather right here, and they just stamp it out and mass-produced. So these little nails here, these are little clinch nails. They're not long. They're not meant to be like an ingrown hair, like a lot of Johnson & Murphy ones are. They're just barely got a little hook on them, and they're strictly to grab some of the leather and hold it down. These big long ones that you saw at the beginning, that's what's gonna go all the way through into the heel block from the insole. I don't need to take this off. A lot of times on some shoes, as soon as you pull the sole off, this thing will start coming off. A lot of times it's made out of plastic or leather board or whatnot, but this one is really fixed into place, and that's good. So I'm just gonna flatten these. Flatten the little nubs out. So now it's at least flat. It's kind of crimped them over, held it even more, and it's going to make room for the sole to sit flat, and then I'll put fresh clinch nails in there. All right, we've got to get this cork out. See how easy this will go. Look at this. Beautiful. There's a little sneak peek right there. There's your shank, wood. They use a wood shank, which actually is what I usually put in most of my shoes. It's just easy. Now here's a little, this is a little cover. Not a lot of people do this on shoes, but this is a well-made shoe. This is a little piece of shoulder leather. You can see where it's actually been skived down. There's the flesh, and they've actually skived this down to kind of give it that fiddle shape, and it will sit on top and give this kind of domed. If you've ever seen the bottom of especially you'll see it on a lot of cowboy boots, where it comes to like a point right through the waist in front of the heel. Well, there's some bespoke shoes that have a real defined point, but a lot of them just kind of have a very subtle. Some of them are just flat, but this is how that's actually done. All right, so we got the cork out, but notice that this is kind of come up. Now, this right here is, a lot of people don't get to see this, and they wonder kind of like, what is the Goodyear welted process? Now, there's two different types of Goodyear welted. There's hand welting, which is still a kind of it's the original. It's what Lobb makes in their bespoke. It's what he originally started doing, but the Goodyear welted process was just kind of the invention of turning that hand welting thing into a very rapid mass-produced thing, process. And so this is actually how that Goodyear welt process, what it looks like. Most of the time it's canvas, and it's got the serrated edges just to kind of help it to be able to turn around. It's done on a machine. This is glued down, and then this little rib right here is really stiff and hard right here. The little rib is actually stitched into the canvas, and it raises up, so it's like a little bitty wall going around. And then that is actually what allows the welt right here to be stitched through that little wall, and it wraps around. So when you've seen some of our videos where we have to put on a new welt, that's what we're going through the welt and through that little wall. But that wall is fixed to the shoe by this little strip of canvas right here. Okay, so I was fixing to talk about some more about the bottoms, but I just noticed the stitching on the upper here, how along the top beading here, they do your standard stitch, but then they put like an extra stitch right along here up underneath this one. And so many times we have shoes that are just, you know, stitched right along with this holding the lining to the outside of the upper, along with the top beading in between. And after so many times of wearing, those threads break. Well, they just thought, hey, let's just go ahead and put a reinforcement in there. So I mean, it's just the experience of Lobb thinking, like, you know, 3 steps ahead. But back to the bottom, another thing that I noticed before I start picking out all these stitches, and you can really see it on this side. We'll try to zoom in so the camera can kind of focus, but you can't even tell where the ran and the welt merge. I mean, it is so, I had to really look, and I'm staring at it right here, because it is so, and they cut them at angles, one at this angle and one at this angle, so that they merge right on top of each other, and it is seamless. I mean, it's incredible. Now over here, you can push it apart, and you can tell those, I don't know if you can see it, but there it is. But when you pull them back together, seamless, craftsmanship. But the first thing we gotta do is we gotta get all these stitches out. Now, we are not gonna replace the welt on these. And the reason why is because there's no reason to replace the welt on this. This thing is solid as a rock. It's actual shoulder leather. And a lot of times, I don't know this because I've never been to the production plant of John Lobb for their mass-produced shoes, but when you're making a bespoke pair, they actually cut out the strip, and it's, you know, yay long, and it's one piece out of a hide. On most mass-produced shoes, they have they buy mass-produced welt from some other manufacturer, and then they glue the pieces together to make a long strip that runs through a machine, and then you see it on YouTube and all these other plants where they're stitching on the welt. I don't know if they do that here. I don't know, but it looks like just straight shoulder leather, which is very nice. Some of these threads just came out when we pulled the sole off, so that makes it easy. Okay, so we put the shank cover back onto it, and it's pretty flat. It's just slightly raised, but this fills in that gap. See, some people that don't use these, they'll just fill in that void with cork, and you don't want there to be a void right there because it'll sink in. You got something to help support the shank, to support the arch. We put some more glue in here, and then we use straight genuine cork. And since this was so thick, we doubled it up. Got a lot of excess, and some of this excess actually can be broken off. You can start to see the shape. There's that leather piece, and you can see where it's starting to crack along here. That's because it's being pushed down into that cavity, and that's the kind of the sign of a Goodyear welt. Versus a Blake stitch shoe, there's a hollow cavity. That rib has raised the whole thing up, and that's why cork is allowed to be put in. And usually you can't put a lot of cork on a Blake stitch shoe because it's pretty much flat. Break some of these chunks off, we can use them later on in other shoes. Alright, so we've got the cork completely filled back in, and we have roughed it down to make it smooth, glued it, ready to stick some new JR soles. Alright, so we've trimmed our sole around here, and we've got to channel it now. So JRs are very hard, so I have to dampen this a little bit just to make it a little easier for me. Alright, so we've stitched the sole on, and to close this channel we have to put some glue on here. I usually put about 2 coats of glue just to make sure that it holds really well. And we just got our hammer and kind of roll it and get that leather to lay back down. All right, now we've got this closed down and we've hammered it around the edge. We've got a little bit of a line. That's just where the leather's been folded up. And I use one of these old oak dowels, and we just kind of rub it back and forth while we still got a little bit of moisture left in the sole, and just kind of adds a little natural burnishment to it. It makes it a little smoother, makes it a little more like glass, and when we shine it up and finish the bottoms. Alright, so we've got this nailed down. We're going to put our blocks back on. And one of the things that I was really impressed with is, and you don't even get this with all Goodyear welted, but especially with these, is how tight, especially this rand is back here. I didn't have to take that off. It was very stable. And when I put the block back on, when I was marking my hill breast line, it was literally like point to point. And that's just an incredible sign that when I cut around and trim around the welt and trim around the seat here, that it's not going to shift. And so there's even some Goodyear welted shoes out there that will shift. You put it back on, you get some overhang, or it's a little bit shorter, and then you have to get it back to the original spot. But this is like spot on, and it does it on both of them. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue on here, and then we'll nail this back down. Alright, so this, if you remember when we took the heel block off, all the nails were coming up this way. This is just a heel wheel, and you can put different nail patterns in here, depending on if it's men's shoes, women's shoes, and it pushes it up. You can do it by hand, but sometimes it's hard to get and it pushes a nail all the way up through and he holds the block on. Alright, so we've nailed the blocks, stuck our new heel lifts on. We're going to have to finish trimming these out and cut around, sand them, and let's do it.
Hey guys, so we've got the soles and all on there. I'm going to kind of take it over from here just to do the shoe shine and kind of get the uppers back in good shape. As you can see, these are in really rough shape. There's a lot of scuff marks, a lot of really deep scratches up here on the toe area. You can kind of see the backs. I don't think the uppers have been shown any love for years, so we are going to completely revamp these. It's a long process, so I'm not going to show all of it, but I'll show you a little bit and then you'll see the final product later on. All right, so kind of what I've done so far, guys, is I have taken very light grit sandpaper. I've sanded down the toe area and anywhere that was really scuffed up, especially back here on the heel area. And now that I've done that, I'm just taking some acetone and just rubbing that all over the shoe just to kind of take off as much of that old polish and finish as I can. And then we are going to re-dye these shoes back to a dark brown, and then after that we'll polish them up. So that's kind of what we're doing. Again, just kind of rubbing these down and getting it cleaned up.
All right, so we've wrapped up this pair of John Lobbs. As you can see, they have done a complete transformation. I just want to point out that, you remember I said that this guy wanted to hand these off to his son. And that's something that a lot of parents, really it's rewarding to parents, is being able to hand off like an heirloom to the next generation. And it's no different with shoes. Something that's been well crafted, if you take care of it, you're gonna give that down to the next generation. So if you like this video, then please give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, tell your friends. We got a lot more videos coming out, and we're probably gonna wind up having some more John Lobbs in here that we just may sit down and do a review with. Until next time.